Nanotechnology and its viability in the future. I mean, I know there's a lot of work being done on it right now, but I don't know anything specific. So, does anyone actually know anything about from the fields they work in?
Well, I would just say about nanotechnology, it's not one thing. It's anything at the nanoscale, which could be, biological compounds or,
DNA.
Parts of cells, yeah, or it could be, other materials, anything at that scale, really. So it's a hugely diverse field, and it is already, out there in medical technology, for example, and in, various paints and all sorts of stuff. So there's tons of nanotechnology out there, and it's being worked on all the time. There was, of course, or there is talk about, so nanoparticles, are they per se, dangerous to humans because they are on the nanoscale, which is another, I think, general misconception. It depends on the particle, depends on what it is, whether it's toxic or not, because we have, parts of ourselves are on the nanoscale.
Now, I remember when nanotechnology was first being broadcast in this country, one of the exciting things that was brought up about that was when you have these nanobots, for lack of a better term, that were able to build themselves or build more of themselves, reproduce out of raw materials, and that's all they were designed to do, was just build more of themselves.
The Drexler robots, or it was that guy Drexler came up with.
Now when a layman gets a hold of an idea like that, they looked at that as like on a bacterial level. I mean, these things are just rebuilding themselves out of raw materials, and they're eventually going to take over. Well, I'm more interested in some of the advances in biotechnology, which I find fascinating, like the idea, for example, that somebody proposed about growing meat in a pan.
Yeah, that would be neat.
I'm fascinated at that. If you could make a superfood that you just grow, and that it has all the nutrients that you need, and you don't need massive farms to do that. I mean, you could just make a patty of some kind of self-perpetuating meatloaf that grows by itself. I think it would be really neat. That's fascinating to me, that you can grow flesh, and it can be completely recycled and fueled. And that to me is
it's very fascinating. But I want to butt in here, if I may. I suspect that it would meet objections that it isn't natural, and I know that Dr. Frank I'm opening up a rant when I mention natural products.
I just basically hate the way that people talk about natural as something good. If anything is natural or has natural in it, it must be good. It's juice with only natural compounds, or natural birth, natural whatever. There's
natural
nothing
neurotoxins.
Exactly. There's nothing inherently good about nature. I mean, there's tons of, toxins out there. There's tons of stuff going on in nature that's not great for us.
Well, nature's very hostile nature.
Yeah.
It also depends on what you're. It also depends on what you're talking about. I mean, if we're going about breasts, for example, I'm going to argue nature.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. You have the experience. I don't.
But you'll never get 3 of them, Aaron.
Well, that's not impossible. Sorry, that's thrown me. I had a serious point to make then. I've completely forgotten it now.
No, but it really, it first got to me when we had the whole GM debate in Europe, which was one of those ridiculous debates where you had people saying that, we cannot grow GM plants in Europe. It's inherently dangerous because it's not natural. It's humans, it's researchers playing God. Come on, some of these plants
I think the point I was going to make is smallpox was natural, wasn't it? And I don't think many people really approved of that. Samuel, I'm going to move on, but thank you very much indeed for the call.
Not only that, but I object. Thank you. I object to the idea of people, talking about playing God. I mean, I see that as that job has a vacancy and should be filled.
Yeah.
Aaron, I know that you slipped it in, and I was going to give you an opportunity of mentioning it, and do so as I bring in the next caller. You were up in Florida last weekend, and as you say, you took high tea at the Randy household. Tell us about that.
We had it was a wonderful visit. Actually, I was very encouraged. I went to have a luminary dinner for the people that were hosting the Darwin Day. That was I've done it 3 years in a row now, and it's been hosted by the Florida Atheists and Secular Humanists Center for Inquiry, the Coalition for the Advancement of Science Education, and the James Randi Educational Foundation. And this time around, Randy sat with me and said we needed to get to know each other and better. Invited me around his house for a couple of hours of conversation. Of primary interest, it seemed, I think, because this is what he opened up with, was the idea that he distances himself from the atheist movement, although everybody that works for it happens to be atheist. He distances himself from the atheist movement because he says that many atheists are alarmingly hateful and vitriolic, and that this is unnecessary. And I told him, and I'm sure that this this aided his perception. I mean, I said that I've mentioned on this show and on the Atheist Experience and on many of the public speaking engagements that I've done that the most outspoken advocates of rationalism and advancement of science education are, for the most part, former believers. Vitriol, hateful, insultory language did not ever change anybody's mind. And these are the people that are now our greatest allies. And you have to bear in mind that whenever you're talking to a believer, somebody that has been indoctrinated and prohibited thinking their entire life, that you can't just bust right in and accuse them of being willfully dishonest in this capacity on purpose. They don't know what the argument is. And you have to get them to understand and realize that if you are successful, they will be your allies soon on. And he appreciated that. He also gave me a book from the Isaac Asimov library, a couple of other things that I said. It was a couple of hours conversation and very warm and charming.
Good. That's very
I just want to brief point in on the hateful atheists thing. I think that very much the ones who bear the largest grudge are those who invested the most in religion. So it's one of those things that if you're actually going to stick with your belief system, this would say, for instance, just taking an example of Scientology, where you actually have to invest real amounts of money. Now, whether you're investing money or time doesn't really matter. You are really, you are to get to this point where you're sort of committed to the lie, as it were, that this really is actually working for you. And then
yes.
When people who have been told all of their life all this sort of creationist bullshit, they come to here, they actually have to, they reach the tipping point where they realize this is bullshit. And yeah, damn straight they bear grudges. If someone stole several years of my life like that as well, I would be bitter. As it turns out, they didn't.
Well, can I pause you? Can I pause you there? Because we did say we're not going to talk about religion on this show. Don't worry. Just for everyone's information, as I say, next show we will be back to bashing religion, and in particular witches and warlocks. But for this show, we're trying to stick to science. So let's move on to the next caller. Nano, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
We can indeed. Welcome to the show.
Hi. I want to ask a question about consciousness. I first want to talk about abortion.
Sorry, we're struggling to hear you. You want to ask a question about consciousness?
And I want to start with abortion. When does every egg in a woman's body has the potential to become a human being? So, is she not killing the eggs, or killing the human beings that could sprout from those eggs every time she's not having sex or something like that?
That is a really
I smell a teenager's thinking here.
Well, you could say eggs have the potential to become human beings. So does every sperm cell. So every time you masturbate, are you in fact killing millions of people?
I mean, if you're Catholic.
The set of atoms in an apple tree has the potential to become a human being. So is that not just a dead human being?
No, a human being is a human being. An egg is not a human being. A skin cell has the potential to become a human being through cloning. It is not a human being. It is a skin cell.
Now, if you're talking about every human gamete, including sperm cells, having the potential to become human beings, then how many people out there really qualify as cannibals?
Yeah. Now that you
We actually refer to as people. This is the thing, that whether I'm alive or dead actually depends on the electrochemistry of the brain. Right? Or I can be alive, dead, and all the atoms are actually here in the right place. The only thing that's changed is the neurochemistry.
Excuse me? What about the soul?
Well, yeah. Yes, the magical soul-brain interface. Ugh. Anyway, so this is the thing, you know, when you actually have a single cell, yes, it's alive, it is capable of self-reproduction, it is capable of a developmental trajectory that will actually lead to something that has a brain and has a consciousness. But you don't actually have a consciousness till you have a brain.
Yeah, and the other thing that you seem to be asking for, and that a lot of people seem to be asking for, is the dichotomy assessment. You know, that it's a simple switch on or off, that it's all the way this or all the way that. And very few things in the universe are that way. I would say none of them, but then that would be just as an absolute statement. What you have are degrees of progression, and the initial gamete hardly qualifies as something that will feel pain or terror or have potential. How many miscarriages are perfectly natural at very, very early stages? You know, and what do these count as?
Can I just ask something? I never understood why in American culture, you know, this, you know, the fetus or, you know, the early embryo, the blastula, whatever it is, has such enormous meaning apparently to people that, you know, is it killing a human being? Is it not? Where does that come from? We don't have that here at all.
Babble.
Lack of understanding of biochemistry.
But can I ask you this, Dr. Frank, because this may be a question that's best addressed to you. What is the current understanding of the stage of the process of development of an embryo where it can be said to have a functioning nervous system and a brain as we sort of understand it?
When would you say that, you know, I don't know. Again, it's a difficult
it's a degree.
It's not that day or that moment or.
Oh no, I wasn't expecting a day, but I mean, it's somewhere between 0 months and 9 months, isn't it?
Sure. I mean, you can have very late abortions where you actually would say, okay, this is an abortion that if we had treated it as a preemie, it could have survived. But you know.
Okay. So does someone want to address where does this come from in America?
Yeah, I would like to bring that up. It comes largely from a misunderstanding of Scripture. I mean, there's all these people that completely ignore all the times when the Bible says that children may be slaughtered for whatever random reason, the most trivial of offenses. If the child is disobedient, kill them. Those people are neighbors. They have the wrong skin. They live in the wrong country. They worship the wrong God. Kill absolutely all of them and leave no survivors, including the babies. Rip the mothers open and tear the babies out. But they forget about Numbers 5, where it talks about how to test whether your wife is being faithful to you or not. And you force her to drink this filthy water that's going under an enchantment spell. And if the baby miscarries, if she was pregnant and the baby miscarries, then, you know, God has assisted you in performing an abortion and she was cheating on you. But if it doesn't cause a miscarriage, then she wasn't cheating on you, and you've got to figure out why she was pregnant when you went on your hunting trip, when you came back from your hunting trip. And these people have this thing where it's not okay under any circumstances, even if you're using cells that will never become a human being, in order to use stem cell research, but it is okay to slaughter children after they're born for any arbitrary reason. That's why we all want to have the death sentence for practically everything.
But that's why I'm really intrigued. Why is the fetus such a battleground?
Because it's
Why?
I think it's because they like the simple and binary thinking. You know, that it's either moral or immoral.
But then,
and, you know, obviously, when it's applied to adults, it's fairly clear when you're killing someone. And the fact that it's not so clear once you get down to a cellular level.
But then it becomes very strange to have the same people be against abortion because it's killing a human being, but be perfectly okay with capital punishment.
Yeah,
yes.
it's an
That
enormous
was a
concept.
topic that I brought up with Andy Thompson when I interviewed him a few weeks ago. It seems somewhat ironic, doesn't it, that they consider life to be so precious at the early stage, but they have no problem with putting a few thousand volts, few people at a later stage in life. I just want to deal with. I know we said we weren't going to deal with religion, but I have my Bible here. And there's Numbers 5. If anyone was interested in what Owen was saying, it starts at Numbers 5:11, and it goes on for quite a few paragraphs. And I had read it, I'd forgotten about it, but I put the yellow stickers on anything interesting, and I have a big yellow stickers here saying WTF ? And it's right. If they're suspected of being an adulterer, they're taken to the priest. He creates this liquid, which includes grains of barley and oil and incense.
It was the Santorum of that age.
I mean, it's quite fascinating, but we're not supposed to be talking about religion.
Rape is a gift from God, don't you know?
But hold on.
Sorry, babies conceived under rape are a gift from God.
Oh, sure.
I have one more point to make about this, and you have to remember that in Hebrew tradition, as supported by the Talmud, that a fetus was considered only water for the first 45 days. And that after that, until conception, it was considered a part of the mother, specifically one of her limbs. More specifically, it was her thigh. Right. Now, in some translations of the Bible, it will say the thigh will rot. And obviously, it's not talking about her left or right thigh. If you refer to Genesis 30, where God cheats in wrestling by punching Jacob in the balls, that's the way they describe it. They say that that he touched him in the hollow of the thigh. So thigh also means groin area. But in other translations of the Bible, it will say that the womb will discharge. And there's no other way to interpret that either, because the belly swells and all of this. Now, people argue vehemently that woman was not pregnant. Well, then how does the womb discharge? And what if she was pregnant? Well, she wasn't pregnant. How do you know she wasn't pregnant? This is a law for general purposes. Why would she suspect cheating if she wasn't pregnant? Are they using birth control? Obviously not, so she's likely pregnant. So if she's pregnant and she takes this thing that will cause her womb to discharge, what happens then? And then you get a meltdown because they can't defend the position, nor can they concede the error because they have everything invested in it. And the reason that this goes back to the question you asked me before, why are they so vehement about this? Because when they want to argue that they have the moral high ground while killing everybody and referring to a scripture that rewards them and challenges them to go around killing everybody, where do they draw the line on how they are moral and we are not? It's because we kill babies for stem cell research.
Right.
Well, that's a good cause.
Let's go back to
leading Christian apologists will quite happily say.
We've got another.
Sorry, let's go back to the question.
Yeah.
What is it that makes you you? I mean, like, what if after you die, the universe collapses and rewinds and Thunderfoot comes back into existence? Is that still you? Or is your consciousness completely gone after you die once? Is that like?
Yes.
It's completely gone. Consciousness.
And I want to.
How do you prove that?
I want to answer that question too.
Sorry, I just wanted to get the end of the question, Aaron. What was the last bit, Nano? How do we prove that?
When your brain's metabolism breaks down once, you're gone forever.
Right.
Because your brain's metabolism is what makes you what you are. But it's also your experiences. I feel very much that I have lived 3 different incarnations in one lifetime, because I've had completely different changes of hearts at 3 or 4 different points in my life where I've ventured a very different path, took on a very different lifestyle, rethought things that I used to believe in, and advanced in a different way. I mean, it's not a lot different than when people claim to have been reborn and then have life-changing events. That happens. And I don't believe things quite the same way that I do, because I have a new revelation, a new understanding that has dramatically changed my original opinions and caused me to go about things very, very differently and make different types of decisions. Your life experiences do accumulate that way. So if you come back, if you disappear from this life and an exact clone of you is made, it will have different experiences, and a different butterfly effect will occur in that mind, and it will be a different mind. Likewise, according to the research of Ramachandran, if you have a significant head injury, it could cause a complete change in your personality where you would effectively be a different person. And you could even be two different people in the same mind at the same time, depending on the type of injury that you have. It's fascinating research. You should look it up.
I'm also reminded of A.C. Grayling's, just one second, I'm reminded of A.C. Grayling's comment when asked about whether consciousness is a product of the mind. And his very simple but powerful answer was, well, if you don't think it is, hit yourself over the head with a brick and see what happens. Dr. Frank.
Well, you were asking me what?
So, but if you reconstructed the exact same brain metabolism that Thunderfoot has, would it not just be the same Thunderfoot?
No.
Well,
Because
I mean,
I know it's not really possible in the real world, but it's just
Well,
interesting.
if you had the same experiences and the same,
Okay, let me put it this way.
if you had everything the same, yeah, you would say it's the same.
But then you would have the difficulty of different experiences. For example, if Thunderfoot was cloned rather than recreated, let's say,
No, but that's
cloned.
that's different.
Okay, I won't go there. I'm sorry.
Okay, let me bring up another analogy. Let's say that you reproduce me as a copy, not as a clone, but as an actual copy. You've got a device of technology where you take even my knowledge and understanding, okay, and you take me as a 7-year-old boy and put me in this machine, and now there are two of me, and one of them is raised in Southern California in the 1960s, and the other one is in my son's generation living in Texas. The backgrounds are going to be completely different, and the version of me that was raised now probably won't have this hairstyle and probably won't have that love of motorcycles and leather jackets. I'm saying musical taste, the new me won't be as good, or he'll be listening to the same stuff.
So, I mean, the analogy that I would use would be essentially hard drive software. That if I install, what makes me is essentially the software. It's the human brain is fairly generic from one person to the next. What's sort of different is the actual connections to the neurons within that. So the analogy I would say is you get a load of generic hard drives. If you actually load exactly the same operating system onto two of them, yeah, they'll be the same. But the thing is, what would be the operating system in this case is actually accurate, is unique given the experiences of that person. So,
but actually, I think.
But what if there was a universe where they had exactly the same experiences?
Yeah, it'd be the same.
If I could just make a comment, I think the really interesting question is how we think about, personhood in a way. You would say, so, who is this you're talking about? We are all just our, immediate brain states. And if our brain states change, we could be said to be different. I mean, there is no core you in there. I really don't believe there is. I think our consciousness is playing a trick on us by sort of telling us that there is this you.
Like,
there must be
2 seconds later, there isn't the same Thunderfoot. There's just another creature that has the memory of being Thunderfoot.
Yeah, I would say it's a work in progress. We are all works in progress, and we change.
Trajectories, I think, would be
it's like going back to what Aaron said. I mean, there is no one Aaron. There are at least 3, and probably more, if you think about it. Because he was not the same person 20 years ago as he is now.
And he's not the same person now as he was at 5 o'clock in the morning after a night full of Guinness in Dublin. So right. people change in that regard as well.
The analogy that I would use here is that people are trajectories in the same way that your car might be viewed as a trajectory, and that the wheels can change, the engine can be fixed, and all this. Is it still the same car? Well, yeah, but
no.
Yes. So if you wanted to actually sort of fully define this parameter space, you would define them as trajectories.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the trajectory is unique, and all right, you have various time indexes for different states, but
a lot of this a lot of this to support what Thunderfoot was saying before about software. If you were to buy two identical computers and then load different software packages on them, I mean, I have an example of that. I've got one system in which Mozilla Firefox doesn't function very well, or doesn't have all the functions that it should have, and on another system, Google Chrome won't open at all. It just doesn't get Google Chrome. So I don't know what the distance in comprehension is, but I mean, they're identical computers hardware-wise.
Yeah.
But the different packages of software, you find some things that conflict. And in a lot of people's minds, there are certain concepts that conflict, and certain levels of education that may conflict with others as well. And one drives the other out.
No, I'm going to move on, but thank you very much for the call.
Wait, can I say one more thing? Can I ask one more question? Just
very
quick
quickly.
Question. It's a yes or no question. Thunderfoot, if you could participate in an experiment where all of your atoms were blown apart and they were reconstructed on Mars, kind of like a teleportation kind of thing, would you be afraid that if you actually participated that you would die at the end of the experiment, or would you say that...
I think questions like this are very contingent on the specific details.
There you go. It was supposed to be yes or no, but we're going to move on.
I've
got quite a few callers lined up, so I'm going to bring them in. Thunder, as I bring in the next caller, you wanted to say something. Please do so.
Yes, or possibly no.